Located only 100 miles off the People's Republic of China coast, Taiwan has had a complicated history and relationship with China. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, China started a new phase of conflict against Taiwan. Chinese warships have been cruising around Taiwan for months now. How close are we to a Chinese Taiwan war, and how difficult would it be for China to invade Taiwan? Make sure you stay to the end of this video to find out. Before diving into modern day history, let's briefly cut the early history of a country that considers itself the only legitimate Chinese republic. For thousands of years, Taiwan accommodated 9 plain tribes. The island was rich with natural resources like gold and sulfur, used as the main ingredient for gunpowder. That's why explorers were coming to an island all across the world. First, Han Chinese crossed the Taiwan Strait during the 15th century. Then the Spanish invaded Taiwan in 1626. After the Spanish and Dutch were chased out of Taiwan, mainland Chinese returned in 1697 to mine sulfur because a massive fire on the continent had destroyed 300 tons of sulfur. After the Manchus crushed the Ming dynasty on the Chinese mainland, the rebel Ming loyalist Qing ran to Taiwan in 1662 and drove out the Dutch, founding ethnic Chinese control over the island. Tribal forces were defeated by the Manchu Qing dynasty's troops in 1683, and parts of Taiwan began to come under control of the Qing Empire. Many Aborigines went to the mountains during this time, and some remain there even today. France and Japan tried to conquer the island during the 19th century. China lost a war with Japan in 1895, and the Japanese occupied Taiwan from 1895 to 1945. Then Japan was defeated in World War II. They relinquished control of Taiwan, and the government of Republic of China re-established Chinese control over the island. Later on, the Chinese communists defeated ROC government forces in the Chinese Civil War, and the KMT-led ROC regime retreated to Taiwan. It established the island as a base of operation to fight back against the Chinese mainland. The new People's Republic of China government from the mainland, led by Mao Zedong, prepared to liberate Taiwan by military force. That's when the period of Taiwan's political independence from China's mainland started and continues to today. When the Korean War started in 1950, the United States tried to prevent the further spread of communism in Asia. And so they sent the 7th Fleet to patrol the Taiwan Strait and stop communist China from invading Taiwan. With the US military getting involved, it forced Mao's government to postpone its plan to invade Taiwan. With US backing, the ROC regime continued to hold China's seat in the United Nations. Taiwan kept plans to recover the mainland and build troops on islands off of the Chinese coast under ROC control. In 1954, an attack by the Chinese Communist forces on those islands made the US sign a mutual defense treaty with ROC. A second military crisis happened in 1958 and led the US to the brink of war with Communist China. The US compelled Taiwan to officially abandon their policy of fighting back against the mainland. However, Taiwan remained committed to recovering the continent through an anti-communist propaganda war. After Taiwan's leader Chiang died in 1957, his son took over, and he led Taiwan through a period of political, diplomatic, and economic transition. Although it was a period of economic growth, in 1972, the ROC lost its seat in the United Nations to the PRC. In 1979, the United States switched diplomatic recognition from Taipei to Beijing and ended its military alliance with the ROC in Taiwan. However, that same year, the US Congress passed the Taiwan Relations Act, which commits the US to help Taiwan defend itself from attacks from the PRC. Meanwhile, the Communist Party began a reform and opening period after Deng came to power in 1978. Beijing changed its Taiwan policy from armed liberation to peaceful unification under the one country, two systems framework. What's more, the People's Republic of China refused to renounce the possible use of force against Taiwan. Still, Taiwan continued a no contact, no negotiation, no compromise policy towards mainland China. Later, Taiwan experienced an economic miracle thanks to the government's investment in high-tech and export-oriented industries. Taiwan's economy became one of Asia's 4 little dragons. In 1987, Chiang Qing lifted martial law in Taiwan and ended the 40-year suspension of the ROC constitution. In the same year, Chiang also let people in Taiwan visit relatives on the mainland for the first time since the Chinese Civil War. The first ROC Taiwan-born president became Lee Teng-hui. He started a transition to democracy, and the Taiwanese identity distinct from China emerged among the island's people. The Republic of China officially continued to claim sovereignty over all of China and recognized PRC control over the mainland. It declared that the ROC currently represents all the people of Taiwan and the ROC-controlled offshore islands. The ban on opposition parties was lifted, with the pro-independence Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, competing with the KMT in local and national elections. The ROC also recognized the PRC while campaigning for the ROC to take over its seats in the United Nations. In the 1990s, the ROC government maintained an official commitment to Taiwan's eventual unification with the mainland. Still, it declared the PRC and the ROC were independent sovereign states in the current stage. Democratization in mainland China was a primary condition for future unification talks. The number of people in Taiwan who viewed themselves as Taiwanese rather than Chinese rose crucially during the 1990s. In 1996, Taiwan held its first direct presidential election, which was won by Lee Teng-hui of the KMT. Before the election, the PRC launched missiles into Taiwan Strait to warn them that it would use force to prevent Taiwan's independence from China. As a response, the US sent 2 aircraft carriers to the area to show that they were ready to defend Taiwan from a PRC attack. In 2000, Taiwan's government experienced its first party turnover when the candidate of a pro-independence Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, Chen Shui-bian, won the presidential election. The 8 years of Shen's administration were very tense. Shen adopted policies that stressed Taiwan's political independence from China. The Communist Party was worried that Shen was moving Taiwan toward legal independence from China, and in 2005 passed the anti-secession law that authorized the use of force against Taiwan to prevent its legal separation from the mainland. The KMT returned to power in the 2008 election, won by Mao Ying. He promised to develop relations with Beijing and promote cross-strait monetary exchange while maintaining its political status. In 2016, Taiwan's current president was elected. She led DPP and leaned toward official independence from China. After Donald Trump won the U.S. election in 2016, Tsai spoke to him on the phone. It was a break from U.S. policies set in 1979 when formal relations were cut. The U.S. has pledged to supply Taiwan with defensive weapons and has declared that any attack by China would cause grave concern. Tsai won a second term in 2020. Later that year, China implemented the national security law in Hong Kong. At the same time, the U.S. reassured Taipei of its continued support. In September 2020, U.S. sent the highest-level State Department official to visit the island. Beijing strongly criticized the meeting. During the controversial visit, China conducted live-fire military missiles in the waterway that separates the island from the mainland. This year, Biden's administration reassured up its commitment to Taiwan is rock solid. In the first few days of Biden's presidency, Taiwan reported a large incursion by Chinese warplanes over 2 days. Then on April 12th, the Taiwanese government said China flew the most significant number of military jets into its air defense in a year. In response, the U.S. Admiral, head of Pentagon's Indo-Pacific Command, declared a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is much closer to us than most think. So you may be wondering, how possible is the invasion after all? Both China and Taiwan possess long-range strike missiles. Both sides also possess significant cyber warfare capabilities. For this, China will need boots on the ground, the physical presence of soldiers dominating the local physical battlefield that would win this conflict. They would have to travel a considerable distance for this. The troops needed to successfully take the island ranges from 400,000 to more than 2 million. Hundreds of transport ships would be required as well, a huge number even if all China's merchant fleet was used. Hundreds of naval vessels would be needed to protect this giant fleet of vulnerable, unarmed transports. Hundreds of helicopters and transport planes would be needed for a strike force. It would take days to load the tremendous force, and in today's satellite-monitored world, there would be no way a force of this size could remain hidden. Taiwan would be fully alerted and have more than enough time to mobilize its reserves. Its allies would immediately start reinforcing Taiwan's position as well. Keeping hundreds of thousands of expeditionary troops combat effective in the middle of a battlefield would involve a huge supply chain. While possible in peacetime, it would struggle to function in the hostile waters of Taiwan Strait. With these factors, coupled with the determined and well-armed allies, the topography of Taiwan itself itself, the preparedness of its military, and the sheer weight of the world opinion that would turn sharply against the mainland China if it tried to invade Taiwan make it an unlikely prospect for the present. However, in the modern world, nothing can be said for sure. But what do you think? Leave your opinion in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss another upload, and you can enjoy the excellent content we send your way. Anyways, guys, take care and have a good one.